Welcome to ProgAxia and Prog's greatest albums. With me, Andy Phillips, and Dr. Prog himself, Paul Googe, and this week we're going to be talking about Trespass from Genesis. Hi everybody, it's Andy here, and I've got Paul with me. Hi Paul.
Hi.
Today we're going to be talking about another album in our little series, Prog's greatest albums, and why they're so good. And today we've got, which one?
We've got one of my all-time favourites.
Oh, yeah. Trespass by Genesis. Why is it one of your all-time favourites?
Yeah, so I chose this because part of it is just the very personal relationship I have to this album. And I guess I first really started being aware of Genesis around Selling England, and certainly by the time Seconds Out sort of came out, I was all over them. And people were playing me Foxtrot or Genesis Live and all the rest of it. But I don't think anyone, and this may be me reinventing my personal past, but I don't remember anyone sort of talking to me about Trespass. So this was kind of like my album. So I've got this sort of like personal ownership of it, which may or may not be true. But I think one of the interesting things about us fans of progressive rock is that when you listen to this, for most of us, we didn't listen to this as the second ever Genesis album we ever heard after From Genesis to Revelation, which was a completely different album. We heard this in the prior knowledge of what they became, which I think is quite a fascinating thing really in its own way, because I guess what we do then is we cut them a bit of slack maybe because we know how great they become. So if it doodles around for a bit, not that I think it really does. I think we're more predisposed to say it's okay. I can see what they did there and how that morphed and developed in time into cinema show or something. Yeah. So I've got a very, very personal sort of like deep attraction to this. And the other thing, before I just shut up briefly, is that at that point about the first album, Genesis to Revelation, I mean, the step up from that album, which was a Jonathan King inspired, basically Svengali figure that he certainly wanted to be, let's sound like contemporaneous Bee Gees. And then they come up with this. Now they decide to go professional. They decide to go for it. They get away for it in the country, don't they? Richard McPhail's house. And having gone back, you can hear stuff like Twilight Ale House and their sort of singles. And you can see how they're beginning to get the steps towards this. But this is such an advance on where they were. And it's a relative sort of like small step to get to Nursery Crime from here. I mean, it's still a step that they took with some change in personnel, as we know. But it's astounding to have got from where they were to this in a relatively short space of time. And some of the playing is fantastic. It is so beautiful. So, yeah, that's one of the many reasons why I can get very excited about this album.
It's sort of strange that you say you got like a personal ownership of it. And it's interesting to hear how that sort of happened for you. Because for me, I sort of feel the same with this, for a slightly different reason. When I got into Genesis around about sort of 75, 76, I guess, only because, again, my friend's brother was playing Genesis at the time. And one of the songs that he played again and again and again was The Knife. And I heard it a lot, and I really got suckered into that track. And I also got an album which was, I think it was like sort of a lot of people from Charisma, an album from Charisma, and one of the things that they had in there was The Knife, but it was like the single version of it. So I got an album with The Knife on it, and it was a track that just completely fascinated me. It just blew me away, and I didn't know Genesis that well. in '75. I was sort of coming out of the sort of, you know, loving pop music and really sort of getting into sort of more rock music, and Genesis was one of them. Trespass came to me really through a friend of mine who said, let's go and buy some albums, and we bought one of them was Trespass, and it was really before I'd heard a lot of the other stuff. So I hadn't really sort of really listened to a lot of the other stuff before. I mean, I'd listened to a few other albums, but I'd never listened to the first album at all. I didn't even know it existed, to be honest. And so I started listening to this, and then I started listening to things like Stagnation. Stagnation for me was just the pinnacle of music for a long, long time. I still love this album as much as I loved it back then. There's some absolutely beautiful, beautiful things on there. You know, I'm just looking at this fantastic inner sleeve, and I just, you know, listening to this music at the time was substantial. It was a big game changer in my mental makeup of what music actually could be and what it was, and where I was going with this as well. This and Close to the Edge, I think, were the two albums that just blew me away so much when I was a young kid. That it just cemented me into progressive rock. You know, this album, Trespass and Close to the Edge, are just astonishing albums, and they're so close to my heart. So I can understand why there's this personal thing for you as well, you know, because it just pulls you in, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, and the artwork, you know, because it's got that lovely scene, hasn't it? But then you've got that knife in it, so that's a statement in itself, isn't it? It's like, hang on a minute, what's that doing there? I'm less enamoured with the inside part of it. I just don't think it's a bit too twee for me, and it doesn't quite go with the external artwork. But hey, I can let them off that. But the album starts with Looking for Someone, and you've just got that, you know, that solo voice, and and you've got that slight vibrato because, you know, Gabriel trying to exercise his inner Otis Redding or whatever else, his soul man stuff. And then, of course, now you hear that and you start to think about Dancing with the Moonlit Night and sort of things like that, and how some of these ideas, you know, gestated over time. But you're right, I mean, Stagnation for me is the standout track.
Yeah.
I mean, the first side I love. You know, I love Looking for Someone. White Mountains, you know, it's a story. You know, and it's a story that I could understand. About Fang. Visions of Angels is just beautiful. But then Stagnation, the sensitivity, you know, from Tony Banks on the solos on that track. I just wonder. I mean, again, he's a young man. They're all young men doing this stuff. I mean, John Mayhew was, you know, slightly older, and this was his one album with them, wasn't he? But for the ability for, you know, and, you know, when I'm listening to this stuff, you know, they were writing this when I was about the age that they were, or perhaps, you know, just only slightly older. I'm like, it's such a stretch for me to have been able to go there. So Stagnation is lovely, and so
it's really strange because, you know, every time you say Stagnation, you go Stagnation. Because that's what it makes you feel like. Stagnation, Dusk, and the Knife. That second half of the album, you know, side 2 of this album, playing that through from beginning to end. It is almost like just one track, you know. It sort of has that vibe of it needs to all go together. For you to understand this album, you need to listen to side B in just like one go, you know. It's like one track for me, you know. But I think it's a critical album because, you know, as you say, this is the first what we call real Genesis album. Yeah, with Genesis Revelation coming out under the guidance of, as you said, Jonathan King, and but I think that happening was a necessary thing for them just to get into the vibe of actually being a band and going into a studio and laying a track down and all that sort of stuff. Because I think by the time that had passed and they had the chance to do something themselves, having just getting into the studio and actually writing music for recording is an art in itself, you know. And you know, it's the last album with Anthony Phillips in it. Last album with John Mayhew as well. And people have sort of said it would have been fantastic to hear Phil Collins on drums on this album, and I guess it would be. But I actually really love the drums on it. I love the dryness of them. It is what it is. It's what made that sound that sound.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that, because I'm thinking about that, because I'm not sure Phil Collins would have done that much different. I mean, it was his first. It would have been his first album if he'd have been with them on that. So I don't think it lacks a terrible amount. Sorry, Phil, but you know, fantastic, brilliant drummer though you were. But no, I don't have an issue with Mayhew's drumming. I think it sounds pretty sympathetic to it. And you like me have probably got a few bootlegs from around this time when Collins does come in and he's playing onto the tracks. And you know, there's not, to my ears, there's not a huge, great difference. So, but you've got that beautiful Rutherford and Phillips interaction with the 12-string guitars, which now that's the sort of quintessential pastoral Genesis sound, which goes with the artwork, and the other thing that draws you in, or draws me in, certainly, is because Gabriel will throw these little things in. So, having already seen and heard Genesis live, when he's got his story on the back of the album with Stagnation, I mean, again, he's just got that couple of lines about, you know, to Thomas S. Eiselberg, a very rich man who was wise enough to spend. It's just like, oh, you know, I'm going to memorize that because that could come up one day. And you know, the knife is for those who trespass against us. Yeah, that will learn you. So little things like that, the little points of detail that I think just sort of, you know, draw you in and keep you there. And the artwork, you can just keep looking at it. You know, there's probably something more in there I haven't spotted yet. You know,
because there's like there's also the sort of emergence of a couple of writing camps as well. You know, because you talked about sort of Phillips and Rutherford with the 12 strings and that sort of beautiful layered 12-string sound where they got, you know, a couple of 12 strings, and don't forget Tony Banks was playing 12 string as well on some of this stuff, so you got like 3 12 strings going, so you can imagine, you know, the tuning time, which is probably where Peter Gabriel started, you know, putting these stories together, because tuning 3 12 strings is going to take a while, you know. And the other sort of writing combo was Banks and Gabriel, which is where things like the knife came out and stuff like that, which was originally called the Nice, apparently, because of like a nod toward
it was
the Nice, Keith Emerson and stuff like that. But yeah, so you've got these two different writing combos, but the way it sort of just all goes together, and as you say, some of the most beautiful keyboard solos and keyboard pieces are on this album. From Tony Banks, some absolutely beautiful ones that just melt. And again, it's one of those albums that I find if you listen to on headphones, you're gone. You know, it submerges you completely, more than a lot of their other albums. This is the one that you just bubble below the water and just, you know, you've gone. You know? So fantastic album. I love it to bits. I always have done. And whenever people sort of say, you know, what's your favorite Genesis album, which you've done in the past, what's your favorite Genesis album? It's like, it's impossible to say, because every time you listen to it, it's like, that's the best one. But every time I listen to this, my heart melts. I just love it. Absolutely love it.
It's my album. It's my precious. It's my precious.
So that was Genesis, Trespass. Fantastic album. If it's one of your favorites, then let us know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And any passing comments, Paul?
It went to number 1 in Belgium.
What more could we say?
So whenever we say, what's Belgium famous for, apart from beer and chocolate and fries and René Magritte, it's also got impeccable music taste in 1970.
Yeah. Perfect way to end. Thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and write some comments, and we'll see you next time. See you later. Bye. Yeah, thanks for joining us on the ProgAxia podcast. Don't forget to like this video and also to leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. It really does help us. We'll see you next time.